this is something I wanted to ask somebody for a very long time, so I'll be a little selfish here and I'll do that. You've mentioned that you want to abolish the Fed. I assume you support a gold standard or a commodity standard?
I support a standard that the market will determine.
Okay.
It probably will be a gold standard.
Okay. I recently got this question from a friend. We were arguing about this, and he asked me, if the United States got rid of the Fed and went to a gold standard, but the rest of the world was still on fiat currency, how would that work?
It would work great. It would work great for Americans and probably pretty lousy for everybody else. And if the Chinese, for example, were really smart right now, they dump the dollar and go to gold standard. How would it work? So, we would have a relatively constant growth supply of money. We would have a stable currency. We had an economy that would grow and thrive. When people exchanged their currency into dollars, those dollars would be convertible into gold, and they could extract gold for it. I don't see a problem with that. So I just don't see the problem.
If they're converting their currency into gold and they're extracting gold from the United States, but we couldn't do the same with their currency.
Yeah, but how does that happen, right? So let's say, how do they get the dollars? They get the dollars because we bought something from them, right? Yeah, and so now they get the dollars, and now we're selling them something. We're giving them gold, but we got something for that gold, right? So what's the problem? We got a nice clothes from Walmart, and they got a few bushels of gold. It really isn't a problem. I don't think economically it's a problem. And again, I encourage you to read the Austrian economists. There's a really good economist right now who does free banking. Larry White. Larry White. He's a professor of economics at George Mason University and an associate something at Cato Institute, and he's excellent on these kind of questions. And he's a free banking kind of guy. And this is not difficult stuff. It really isn't. It really isn't. So if we don't want to, if they're not going to buy anything from us for the gold to come back, at some point the transactions are going to end, right? They're not going to. This goes both ways. We sell them and they buy from us. So it evens out the price of the dollar relative to their currency. It all evens out in the end, and there's no flight of gold into one area, and we get depleted of gold. That just doesn't happen.
All right. Thank you for your talk. I agreed with everything you had to say, but my situation is that I work all the time because I have my own business that I love, and therefore I work at it all the time. And so I agree with you, but what can I do to protect the freedom and defend the little bit of freedom that we have left?
This is not a planted question, though. It should have been. Well, I think there are a lot of things you can do. I think the most important thing you can do is just speak up. So many people are silent. They don't want to speak up. Their friends are all talking about how wonderful Obama is, or how wonderful this healthcare plan is, or how wonderful, the cap and trade, or whatever it is. Just stand up and say, I don't agree. That has an enormous amount of power. And you're surprised that when you do that, how many people say, well, I don't either, and I don't either. People, there's a huge silent majority in this country, not that agrees with everything I said, but that disagrees with particular policies. And the way to bring that about is to just be an example. Just get up and speak. So a huge part of it is just speak up. If you have time and resources, you can do a lot more than that. You can write letters to editor. You can write op-eds. You can support particular political candidates if you can find any that are any good. It's a challenge, right? Wait. I haven't gotten to that. I'm building up to that, Lynn. So there are a lot of things I think you can do in a day-to-day life that don't take a lot of time. And then, of course, I think you can support entities like the Ayn Rand Institute, the Ayn Rand Center for Individual Rights. In a sense, there's a division of labor. We are your intellectual fighters out there. Go out, make lots and lots of money, and send us checks so we can fight the fight for you. And let me make this very, very clear. Only do it if you believe it's in your self-interest. I'm not asking for sacrifice. I'm not asking for you to be selfless. I want you to believe that the things that we do at the Ayn Rand Institute, that these books, that these lectures, that the stuff we do supports your values, that you, long-term, will be better off for supporting it. But, with more resources, we can do more stuff. We can get more groups like this together. We can get more books out there. We can do more television. We can get more kids reading. We can really have an impact on the culture. But you can't do that without resources. And the nature of the battle is that, you can't run a 40-year campaign to change the culture as a for-profit entity. The profits are not financial, and they're not short-term. They're very long-term. But they are profits. They're just not financial profits. So supporting the Institute is a great way to get those values realized out there. And, ask the people who supported this lecture series if they like the lecture, hopefully, then, they'll say they get a lot of satisfaction out of this, the fact that this is happening. Selfish satisfaction, self-interested satisfaction. Yeah.
As a member of America's youth, I wonder how we as a nation can ensure that today's young people will watch and understand what's happening today in our country with politics and the economy, to ensure that we don't foster the mentality that, the adults will handle it. We can just sit back and relax, and then 30, 40, 50 years down the road, we have the same problem.
Look, it's not having the same problem. You guys are in big trouble. I have kids, and I don't know what to tell them. The fact is that in the next 20 to 25 years, if nothing dramatic changes, this country goes bankrupt. You're seeing what's happening in Europe? That's us, just a little bit down the road. And we are bankrupt today. We just, nobody's acknowledged it yet. In Europe, they're starting to acknowledge the fact that they are bankrupt. But think about this. Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, just those three programs, have an unfunded liability. That is, they promise to pay out more than what they know they'll receive, the gap between those two, which the government doesn't carry on its balance sheet. If you did accounting like this in your company, you would go to jail. That unfunded segment is $103 trillion with a T dollars. Now, that is a number produced by the government. It's a very optimistic number. It's probably a lot larger than that. You cannot tax the American people to get that number. You put a VAT on, and you increase income tax, and you have a national sales tax. Doesn't matter what you do. You're not going to get that $103 trillion. And that's just Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. That's not the current health care bill. That's not future socialized medicine where we're heading. That's not the structural deficits that we run in government every single year, which accumulate and accumulate. And all of those numbers assume really, really nice, steady 3% GDP growth for the next 75 years. They all assume that we continue to pay our taxes at the same rate, even though when they increase it, we know that revenues actually fall because we stop working. You're in big, big trouble because your generation is going to have to pay for it. We'll be gone. Many of us will be gone by then. And there's no way you can pay for it. So you're going to, you're going to have to restructure everything, and you're going to bear the pain. Not us as much. So this is crucial. This is not about doing it all over again. This is about having it much, much worse than what we have today. Much worse than what we have today. And to do that, it's all about education, education, education. This is a battle. It's a massive battle. Look, I have this analogy. Some of you might have heard this before. But I have this analogy. We're all sitting on a raft. There's this raft in a river. And the current is pushing it along the river. And there's a waterfall. And if you do nothing, the raft is going to go over the waterfall. And 300 million people are sitting on this raft. And we all have oars. And we're all rowing towards the waterfall. Now, Republicans might have little holes in their oars and they're rowing slow. And Democrats might have big oars and they're rowing fast. But everybody is rowing towards the waterfall. Nobody is proposing to turn around and go the other way. Nobody. And the battle is, and it's a 20, 25, maybe 30 years, maybe 15, maybe 10. The battle is to stop going over that waterfall. To turn the raft around, put an engine at the end, and go the other way. And I'm not talking about achieving capitalism in the way we, just moving the other way. That is the battle. And that's what needs to be done. And the only way to do that is through education. And the only way to get young people to understand it is through education, education, education. Speak up. Write. Hand out copies of Ayn Rand's books because they're great, again, demonstrations of this. But speak up, write, communicate, get the word out there. Tell people how bad things could be and what they need to do in order to change it. And what we need is going back to the individualistic nature of this country. What we need is a true individual responsibility, not the way conservatives use it, but real responsibility for your own life, fully. And, you know, young people, you know, the younger you start, the more likely you are to be successful in that educational process. And again, the burden is really on those young people because you're going to be paying for it, one way or the other.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to make these. We're going to make these the last 4 questions.
If we were ever fortunate enough to lose our current tax code, what would be the better thing to replace it with? A flat tax or a national sales tax or some other form of revenue stream?
Well, I mean, it depends on, in the movement towards no tax, I would think from a purely economic perspective, the best tax is a flat consumption tax on everything. It's better than a flat income tax because what do you do when you tax income? You tax production. You tax work. You tax people creating stuff. You know, a much healthier from a purely economic perspective would be to tax consumption. The problem with the consumption tax is that you'll have both, right? Because we've got a constitutional amendment that says income tax okay, so you'd have to repeal that. We'd have to repeal, what was it, the 14th Amendment? 16th Amendment in order to, if you wanted, I would be against the sales tax as long as you had that in the Constitution. Otherwise, clearly, a flat tax, a low flat tax, is far superior to what we have today. Any kind of flatness in tax rate is more just, and it's economically more sound. I mean, this financial regulatory bill that's passing through Congress is making such a muddle, not only of the financial world, but of our tax code, that it is an unbelievable disaster. And if you're from the financial industry, trying to figure out what tax implication this bill has for you is complicated and a disaster. It's going to provide a huge disincentive for people to engage in healthy financial activities in the future, whether hedge fund business, private equity business, banking businesses, are being destroyed by what's going on right now. You need simplicity, for economic sanity, again, in that transitional period. So that would be a good step in the right direction.
Thank you.